Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Close your eyes for a second and just picture this. You're standing right in the middle of a massive meat hall in the Viking village of Birka. It's a festive night, right? The air is absolutely thick with wood smoke, the smell of roasted meat, people chatting and laughing. They're all gathered around this roaring hearth to celebrate Chieftain Arnulf's birthday. But if you look a little closer, beneath all that warmth and flowing mead, there's this heavy, really somber undercurrent. This isn't just a party. It's a whole community wrestling with a ghost. The sea takes what it will. It is the will of Odin. Those are Chieftain Arnulf's words, and they perfectly capture the emotional stakes we're dealing with today. You see, Arnulf is carrying this unimaginable grief. He lost his son, Erik the Bold. Years ago, Erik sailed off into uncharted western waters, completely obsessed with visions of vast, undiscovered lands. And he never came back. Arnulf had to just swallow that devastating loss, believing it was simply the will of the gods. But as we're going to see, that shared grief, it was about to spark something absolutely incredible. Section 1. A Village in Mourning. So, back in that smoky mead hall, the renowned storyteller Pippin is called upon to recount the sorrowful saga of Erik the Bold. As Pippin weaves this tragic tale of Erik's disappearance, something amazing happens. Instead of everyone just sinking into despair, the entire hall suddenly erupts into this spontaneous, thunderous toast. "Hail Erik," they chant. It's wild, because an event that could have easily broken this village apart ended up binding them together. The pain literally created the love. It's this miraculous transformation where communal grief turns into an unbreakable bond of solidarity. Losing their favorite son actually became the very glue that made Birka so strong and resilient. Section 2. The Vision of Ragnar. Now, that powerful display of unity planted a seed in the mind of one young man, Ragnar Serpenteye. About a week later, Ragnar casually approaches Chieftain Arnulf, supposedly to talk about cattle pastures. But he actually has a bold, incredibly carefully considered proposal. Now, to really understand the massive weight of what Ragnar is about to suggest, you have to keep this number in mind: 0. That is exactly how many clues were ever found regarding Erik's fate. 0 washed-up planks of wood. 0 traveler's tales. Nothing. And Arnulf confides in Ragnar that he had to accept this absolute loss, because as a chieftain, he just couldn't selfishly risk more lives on some desperate, hopeless rescue mission. But Ragnar, who's been driven by these stories of Western lands since he was a kid, asks to lead a brand new, fully equipped expedition. He looks at Arnulf and says, "Perhaps we can discover the fate of your son." You can imagine the internal conflict tearing Arnulf apart here. He had sworn to himself he'd never ask another man to face that western void. But since Ragnar is stepping up of his own free will, totally driven by his own spirit, Arnulf finally agrees. He starts to truly believe that maybe Odin himself is guiding Ragnar's steps. Section 3. Forging the Great Ship. Over the next 6 months, the entire community mobilizes in this massive, totally unprecedented effort to build the ultimate ship. Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer engineering genius of these Norse shipbuilders. They used a method known as clinker construction. Basically, instead of just butting planks against each other flush, they made each hull plank overlap the one directly beneath it. This meant they weren't just building some rigid wooden box. They were crafting a dynamic, flexible vessel that could literally bend and move with the unpredictable, violently shifting waves of the open ocean. So let's break down exactly how these master craftsmen pulled this off. Step 1, they headed deep into the forest to find naturally curved oak trees, which they used to create a solid, incredibly strong backbone or keel for the ship. Step 2, they used a technique called radial splitting on pine trees. They literally split the wood along its natural grain using wedges, which makes the planks incredibly tough and naturally watertight. And finally, step 3, they fitted curved oak ribs to the keel and fastened the whole overlapping structure together with heavy iron rivets. It's just a brilliant piece of engineering. But hey, a ship is literally nothing without its crew, right? This was a top-to-bottom community effort, and the key roles really highlight that. You've got Bjorn, Ragnar's shield brother, doing all the heavy lifting and keeping everyone's spirits up. Then there's Christina, who is managing an absolute mountain of food preservation. We're talking endless salting of fish and smoking of meats. You have Randveig, the old woman, acting as the spiritual anchor, blessing the timbers with her lodestar fragment. And her nephew Sven Loki brings his keen eye for quality control and tying these incredibly complex knots. It was just this perfect, well-oiled machine of human cooperation.
Section 4. Jormungandr sets sail. By June, this magnificent ship is finally sitting in the harbor, blessed by Chieftain Arnulf and proudly named after the legendary Midgard serpent.
Ragnar stands before the crowd and makes a really profound pledge. This ship isn't just wood and iron. The Jormungandr carries the spirit, the hope, and the dreams of Birka in every single plank. The emotional weight of that moment is just huge. The festival rages on deep into the night, but by dawn, the vibe completely shifts. The crowds are gone, and in a quiet, incredibly somber departure, the crew casts off their lines. The Jormungandr glides silently out of the fjord, leaving the absolute safety of home behind them. Section 5. Trials of the Sea. Right out of the gate, the crew is tested as they try to adjust to the erratic winds of the Baltic. You know, the sea is nothing if not deeply unpredictable. Just think about this stark contrast. They start off in the calm archipelagos, these sheltered, relatively peaceful waters where they're casually passing friendly traders. But the second they near the straits leading to the open Skagerrak, the water just violently transforms into what the source describes as a bubbling stew. Suddenly, they find themselves in the treacherous Channel of Knives, a terrifying marine zone packed with violent undertows and jagged, ship-killing rocks. Out of nowhere, this invisible, overpowering current grabs the Jormungandr and spins her totally sideways. I mean, the tearing sound of wood on stone is every sailor's absolute worst nightmare, and they are literally inches away from it. Ragnar is barking orders from the mast, Sven-Loki is straining with everything he has against the steering oar, while Bjorn hauls the main sheet trying to catch a new angle of wind. And then, with a massive, shuddering lurch, the ship's clinker-built hull actually holds firm. They manage to literally claw their way free from the jagged edge of doom. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute emotional roller coaster of their voyage so far. They go from this triumphant launch at Birka straight into a near-death experience in the Channel of Knives. Then, almost immediately after, they pass a friendly ship, experience a miraculous wildlife encounter, before finally getting a moment of rest at Lyngholm. Let's zoom in on those middle events for a second because they have a massive psychological impact on the crew. So, shortly after surviving the rocks, they spot a familiar silhouette out on the horizon. It's the Sea Trader. It's a ship captained by Thorfinn, and it's heading straight home to Birka. As the ships pass each other, they exchange a roaring horn salute and shouts of recognition. But as the Sea Trader slowly fades into a tiny speck on the horizon, this really sharp pang of homesickness hits the crew. That passing ship represents their final, severed connection to the safety of the world they know. Now they are entirely alone, and the tension ratchets right back up. The lookout, high up in the crow's nest, spots something terrifying. There is a massive, dark, churning mass in the water, and it is heading purposefully and directly toward the Jormungandr. Crewmen immediately grip their axes. Bjorn's hand goes straight to his sword hilt. Out in the vast, untamed ocean, you literally never know what kind of monster might be rising up from the depths. So what could this thing possibly be? Suddenly, this booming laugh from the lookout echoes across the water. It's not a monster at all. It's a magnificent pod of whales. The lookout joyfully calls down, referring to them as our black-skinned brothers of the Deek. These massive, beautiful creatures are playfully swimming right alongside the ship, blowing geysers of spray that rain down on the exhausted crew. In an instant, all that intense fear just dissolves into pure, heartfelt wonder. It's one of those beautiful, spontaneous moments that bonds the crew even tighter together. As the sun sets on a day of absolute wild extremes, Håkon the Helm, who's a deeply seasoned sailor, approaches Ragnar. He strongly recommends they steer for Lyngholm, which is a sheltered little island just up ahead. Håkon points out that Lyngholm has a safe sandy beach and sweet river water. But more importantly, it is the absolute final patch of solid ground they are going to see before they hit the true open ocean. Ragnar wisely agrees, knowing he needs to let his exhausted crew rest while they can. The rhythmic splash of oars pulls the Jormungandr toward that welcoming beach, offering a brief, much-needed respite. They have a magnificent ship, a totally united crew, and they believe they have the blessing of Odin himself. But the crazy part is, the real journey hasn't even begun yet. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. With the safety of Lyngholm soon to be completely behind them, what terrors and what incredible truths about Erik the Bold truly await the Jormungandr out in that endless, uncharted western void?